I've been a rideshare driver in the Minneapolis and St. Paul market for nearly 4 years now. For the first 2 of those years, I actually drove for both Lyft and Uber at the same time. But about a year and a half ago, I decided why not dedicate 99% of my time just to Lyft. The main reason being they offered the power driver bonus and in-app tipping. And I shortly found out that by dedicating all of that time to Lyft, I was actually making more and working less. It was a win-win. Joe here with the Rideshare Guy, and today we're going to recap my last year of driving with Lyft. And be sure to stick around to the end because we'll break down the actual numbers, and I'll show you my per hour rate for the year. And so again, the main reasons I drive almost exclusively for Lyft are the power driver bonus and in-app tipping. Those account for quite a bit more. It brings my hourly rate up quite a bit more than it would if I were to drive, say, exclusively for Uber. Even though Uber has included the tipping option, I've always found that, or tipping option now, I've always found that Lyft passengers are just a little bit more generous, and they like to tip. It's always been included in the app, so they're used to tipping, so I feel like they tip a little bit more. Next, we'll jump into a spreadsheet. We'll show you some of my hourly rate, my hourly numbers. We'll show you kind of my driving pattern throughout the year, and we'll break down how much more I make because of the power driver bonus and tipping. So here's a spreadsheet I created to break down the numbers. I broke it down to 4 parts of the year, which were basically my different driving patterns. I had different driving patterns during each of those periods. So here we can see January through March. And you can see here in the image my driving pattern. So I would basically drive a lot of daytime hours, and I'd get my peak. I'd mix in some Monday evenings, and I'd get the majority of my peak hours during Friday evenings. I'd typically drive, from about 4 to midnight on Fridays. And you can see the PDB, the power driver bonus requirements during that time were 25 peak rides and 55 total rides for a 20% bonus. During that period, I averaged 35 hours a week, I averaged 73 weekly rides, and my average hourly rate was $22.60. Of those 35 hours, about 10 of them weekly were peak hours. And during this time, as you can see, I concentrated on Friday night to attain most of my peak rides. During this time, Lyft had removed the AM peak hours, so I would typically try and get the peak hours from 7 to 9 a.m., but those were not available during January through March. We'll move on to April through July. So at the beginning of April, Lyft decided to include the AM peak hours again, so that's where I focused most of my peak time. They actually removed some peak hours Friday nights. I still drove some Friday night, but I wasn't doing it as heavily as I was January through March. So this is my typical driving pattern. I focused on the AM peak hours, and I also included some peak hours on Monday nights still, and some on Friday nights as well. So the power driver bonus requirements were still 25 peak rides and 55 total rides during that period. I averaged about 34 hours a week. My average weekly rides were right around 58, and my average hourly rate was $19.72. And during April through July, I averaged right around 14 peak hours. So we'll move on to August through October, and since the January-March time frame, after Lyft added the AM peak hours again, that's where I concentrate my peak rides during those times. I actually started to drive a little bit less beginning in August through October. I drove heavily on Mondays. Sometimes I'd put in 10, 11, 12 hours on Mondays. I put in about right around 8 hours on Tuesdays. I'd hit the AM rush Wednesday through Friday, and then I would do the Friday afternoon peak. If I still needed to pick up a few peak rides, I would do some Sunday morning driving. So during that time, the power driver bonus requirements changed a little bit. It was no longer 20%, it was a $105 bonus. So Lyft was taking a little bit of a commission, but still not very much. After I attained the bonus, so in order to attain the PDB, it was 30 peak rides now and 55 total. It used to be 25, they changed it to 30 during this time. My average weekly hours were 27. Like I said, I dropped my hours a little bit. My average weekly rides were 56, and my average hourly rate was $21.88. And now we'll go to the last part, November through December. So I kept kind of the same driving pattern as August through October. The PDB requirements changed a little bit though, so I drove a little bit less. So it was 25 peak, 45 total rides for a $70 bonus, as opposed to the 105, which was available August through October. My average weekly hours were 23, my average weekly rides were 47, and my average hourly rate was $22.85. During this time, I still averaged right around 14 peak hours. Basically, since April, I've been averaging around 14 peak hours. And we'll slide over to the summary. So for the year, I averaged 31 hours per week. I averaged 60 rides per week. My average hourly rate was $21.20. So that hourly rate was quite a bit higher because of the power driver bonus and because of tips. So 364 of the 2120 was due to the power driver bonus, and 174 of the 2120 was due to tipping. My pre-power driver bonus and tipping hourly rate would have been $15.81, but with tipping and the power driver bonus, I was making $21.20 per hour. So we'll do some quick math. If we do 21.2 minus 15.81, you get 5.39, and if we divide 5.39 by the 15.81. So again, I was making an additional $5.39 because of the power driver bonus and tips, and that was an increase of 34% in hourly rate. So again, by driving exclusively for Lyft and attaining the power driver bonus consistently and receiving those in-app tips, I'm able to make substantially more per hour than I was back when I was driving for both Lyft and Uber at the same time. Like I said at the beginning, it was a win-win. I'm working less and making more. It's also a lot less stressful just having one app open compared to when I used to have both apps open at the same time and needing to log out of either or whenever I received a request. It's just much more seamless and a better driving experience for me. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, or subscribe, and drive safe.